I've always believed that love is a kind of architecture. You build it brick by brick, with care, with intention, over years. You choose the right materials, trust, laughter, shared dreams, and you lay them down with precision, knowing that a single crack can bring the whole thing tumbling down. My wife, Elise, and I had built something beautiful, or so I thought. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids, a cozy house in the suburbs of Portland, and a rhythm to our lives that felt as steady as the rain that falls on Oregon most days of the year. I'm a structural engineer, so maybe I'm predisposed to think in terms of foundations and load-bearing walls, but I genuinely believed our marriage was solid. Until it wasn't. It was a Tuesday in late April, the kind of day where the air smells like wet earth and new beginnings. I'd been working late on a project, a new community center downtown, all sleek lines and ambitious cantilevers. My firm, Cascade Designs, had landed the contract after months of pitching, and I was buried in blueprints and calculations. Elise, a freelance graphic designer, had been supportive, as always, telling me to chase the big projects, to make my mark. She'd kiss my forehead when I stumbled home exhausted, her hands cool against my skin, and she'd pour me a glass of that Pinot Noir we both loved. "You're building something important, David," she'd say. "I'm proud of you." That night, though, something felt off. I got home around 9 p.m., my laptop bag slung over my shoulder, my head buzzing with numbers and deadlines. The house was quiet, which wasn't unusual. Our kids, Mia and Ethan, were 16 and 14, old enough to be holed up in their rooms with headphones or out with friends. But Elise wasn't in the living room sketching on her tablet, nor was she in the kitchen humming along to her jazz playlists. The lights were low, and there was a stillness that felt staged, like a scene waiting for its actors. "Elise," I called, setting my bag on the counter. No answer. I climbed the stairs, my boots heavy on the hardwood, and checked our bedroom. Empty. The bed was made, her side untouched, her favorite cardigan draped over the chair. I pulled out my phone and texted her. *home. Where you at? No response. I checked the kids' rooms. Mia was at a friend's. Ethan was at soccer practice. I was alone in the house, and a strange unease began to coil in my gut. I wandered back downstairs, trying to shake the feeling. Maybe she was at a client meeting or grabbing coffee with a friend. Elise was spontaneous like that, always had been. It was one of the things I loved about her. Her ability to turn a mundane evening into an adventure. Like the time she dragged me to a midnight book release party for some obscure graphic novel she adored. But as I poured myself a glass of water, I noticed her keys on the hook by the door. Her car was still in the driveway. I checked the garage to be sure. Yep, her silver Subaru sat there, gleaming under the fluorescent light. Now the unease was a full-blown knot. I called her phone. It rang, and I followed the sound to the living room, where it vibrated on the coffee table, screen flashing with my name. She'd left it behind. Elise never left her phone behind. She was tethered to it for work, for the kids, for everything. I picked it up, the screen unlocking with a swipe. She'd never bothered with a passcode, a habit I teased her about. "What's the point?" she'd say, laughing. "I've got nothing to hide." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over her messages. I'd never snooped before. It felt like crossing a line, like stepping into a room I wasn't invited to. But the quiet house, the abandoned phone, the absent keys, it all pressed against me, insistent. I opened her texts. The first thread was with me, a string of mundane exchanges about dinner plans and Mia's orthodontist appointment. Below that, a group chat with her book club. And then, a name I didn't expect. Ryan. Ryan was our neighbor, a single dad who lived 3 houses down. He was a photographer, the kind of guy who always seemed to be tinkering with vintage cameras or lugging tripods around. We'd had him over for barbecues, shared beers on the patio while the kids ran through sprinklers. He was friendly, easygoing, maybe a little too charming, but I'd never thought much of it. Elise and I were solid. Weren't we? The thread with Ryan was long, stretching back months. I scrolled, my heart thudding. The early messages were innocuous. Talk about a neighborhood watch meeting, a joke about the HOA's obsession with lawn maintenance. But as I scrolled up, the tone shifted. Missed you at the block party, Ryan wrote in early March. You owe me a dance. Elisa's reply, next time, I promise. A winking emoji. My mouth went dry. I kept going. Messages about meeting for coffee, about needing to talk. A photo from Ryan, a sunset over the Columbia River, captioned, wish you were here. Elisa's response, asterisk gorgeous. Maybe next time. Asterisk my hands shook as I scrolled further. 2 weeks ago. Can you get away tonight? From Ryan. Elise. Asterisk kids are with David's mom. I'll figure something out. Asterisk and then, last night. Asterisk meet me at the studio. 7 p.m. Asterisk her reply. I'll be there. The studio. Ryan's photography studio. A converted garage behind his house. I checked the timestamp. 7:03 p.m. yesterday. I'd been at the office neck-deep in structural load analyses while Elise was… Where? With him? My mind raced, trying to piece it together. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were working on a project together. She'd mentioned collaborating with a photographer for a client's branding campaign. But the emojis, the secrecy, the I'll figure something out, it didn't feel like work. I set the phone down, my breath shallow. The house felt too big, too empty. I grabbed my jacket and walked out the back door, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. Ryan's house was a short walk, just past the Johnsons' overgrown rhododendrons and the Millers' perpetually barking dog. His lights were on, the studio glowing faintly from the backyard. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't have a plan, but my feet carried me forward, propelled by a need to know. The studio door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling onto the grass. I pushed it open, my pulse hammering in my ears. The space was cluttered, tripods, light stands, rolls of backdrop paper. A couch sat against one wall, draped with a velvet throw. On a table, 2 wine glasses, one with a faint lipstick smudge. Elisa's shade, coral pink. My stomach lurched. David! Ryan's voice startled me. He emerged from a back room, a camera in hand, his expression shifting from surprise to something guarded. What's up, man? Everything okay? Where's Elise? My voice was steady, but it felt like someone else was speaking. He frowned, setting the camera down. Elise? I haven't seen her. Why? Don't, I said, holding up a hand. I saw the texts. I know she was here last night. Ryan's face tightened, just for a second, before he forced a laugh. Texts? Come on, David, you're reading too much into something. We're friends. She's helping me with a portfolio for a gallery show. Then why's her phone at home? Why'd she lie about where she was? I stepped closer, my hands clenched. Why's there lipstick on that glass? He glanced at the table, then back at me, his jaw working. Look, you're upset. I get it. But you're jumping to conclusions. Let's talk this out. Don't patronize me, I snapped. I'm not an idiot. I know what's going on. He held up his hands, palms out, like he was calming a wild animal. David, nothing's going on. I swear. Elise loves you. She talks about you all the time. The words hit like a punch, not because they were reassuring, but because they weren't. They were too smooth, too practiced. I turned and walked out, ignoring his calls to come back. The night air was colder now, the stars sharp overhead. I got home, my mind a tangle of rage and disbelief. Elise still wasn't there. I sat on the couch, her phone in my hand, and waited. She came home at 11:47 p.m. I heard the front door creak, her footsteps soft on the hardwood. She froze when she saw me, her purse slipping slightly in her hand. David, she said, her voice bright but brittle. You're home early. Am I? I held up her phone. You left this. Her eyes widened, just a flicker, before she smiled. Oh God. I've been looking for that. I was at a client's, rushed out and forgot it. Stop, I said quietly. I saw the texts, Elise, with Ryan. The color drained from her face. She set her purse down, her movements slow, deliberate. David, it's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I said, standing. Tell me why you're sneaking off to his studio, lying about where you are. Tell me why his texts sound like he's in love with you. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted to the floor, then back to me. We're friends, she said finally. We've been working together. That's all. I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You expect me to believe that? After months of secret messages? After you left your phone and your car and lied about where you were? David, please, she said, stepping closer, her hands reaching for me. I stepped back, and she froze, her hands falling to her sides. I'm not. I haven't done anything to hurt you. I swear. But she had. The truth was in the way she couldn't meet my eyes, in the way her voice trembled. I didn't know the full extent of it yet, but I knew enough. The architecture of our marriage, the thing I'd spent 20 years building, had a crack running through it, and I wasn't sure it could be fixed. I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her standing in the living room. I locked the bedroom door behind me, not because I thought she'd follow, but because I needed a barrier, something solid between us. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. All I could think about was Ryan's studio, those wine glasses, and the life I thought I knew crumbling beneath me. The days after that night were like walking through a house after an earthquake. Everything familiar, but tilted, unsteady, threatening to collapse. I went through the motions. Getting up, making coffee, driving to the office, staring at blueprints until my eyes burned. But my mind was elsewhere, caught in a loop of Elisa's trembling voice, Ryan's too smooth denial, and that coral pink lipstick smudge on the wine glass. I didn't confront her again, not right away. I needed proof, something concrete to anchor the storm in my chest. Doubt is a cruel architect. It builds walls where you don't want them and tears down the ones you need. Elise acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me good morning, her lips cool and perfunctory, and asked about my day as if we were still the couple who shared everything. I played along, nodding, forcing smiles, but every word felt like a brick added to the wall between us. The kids noticed the tension. Mia, with her sharp 16-year-old intuition, kept giving me sidelong glances, while Ethan, oblivious in his teenage bubble, just complained about soccer practice. I wanted to protect them, to keep this fracture from splitting their world apart, but I didn't know how. Not yet. I started watching Elise more closely, cataloging her habits like an engineer inspecting a failing structure. She was home every evening now, her phone never out of sight, but she was jumpy, checking it too often, her fingers hovering over the screen before she'd set it down with a forced smile. I didn't touch her phone again, partly because I didn't trust myself not to smash it, partly because I wanted to catch her in the act, to see the betrayal unfold in real time. I needed to know how deep the crack ran. A week after the studio confrontation, I decided to dig. I'm not a detective, not by a long shot, but I'm good with systems, with finding weak points and tracing them to their source. I started with Ryan. His photography studio had a website, a sleek portfolio showcasing moody landscapes and candid portraits. There was a section for collaborations, and sure enough, Elisa's name was listed, credited for designing his logo and promotional materials. It looked legitimate, professional, but it didn't explain the late-night texts or the wine glasses. I dug deeper, checking his social media, his posts on X. Most were innocuous, photos of misty forests, camera gear for sale, a few vague musings about art and inspiration. But one post, from 3 weeks ago, caught my eye. A black and white shot of a woman's hand holding a glass of wine, captioned, "Moments that linger." The hand wore a bracelet I recognized. A thin silver chain with a tiny moon charm. Elisa's bracelet. My throat tightened. I cross-referenced the date. April 2nd. I'd been at a site visit that evening, overseeing the foundation pour for the community center. Elise had texted me she was working late on a client deadline. I pulled up our bank records, something I hadn't done in years. We had a joint account, but Elise handled most of the day-to-day finances. I scanned the transactions, my heart pounding. There it was, a charge for $47.82 at Vino Veritas, a wine bar downtown, on April 2nd. She hadn't mentioned going out. I checked further. More charges, small but consistent, at cafes, restaurants, even a boutique hotel called the Laurel, all on nights I'd been working late. The hotel charge, $189 for a single night in March, hit like a sledgehammer. I sat back, staring at the screen, the numbers blurring as my vision swam. I didn't confront her yet. I needed more, something undeniable. I bought a small GPS tracker, the kind contractors use to monitor equipment, and slipped it into the lining of her purse one morning while she was in the shower. It felt dirty, like I was betraying her as much as she was betraying me, but I pushed the guilt down. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about truth. The tracker synced to an app on my phone, showing her movements in real time. For 2 days, nothing unusual, her studio, the grocery store, Mia's orthodontist. But on Friday, the dot moved to an address I didn't recognize. A loft apartment in the Pearl District, a trendy part of Portland full of galleries and overpriced coffee shops. I cross-checked the address online. It was a rental property, listed as a creative live/workspace. The owner, Ryan Caldwell. I drove there that evening, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The building was a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and oversized windows. I parked across the street, the tracker app showing Elisa's purse still inside. I waited, the minutes stretching into an hour, then 2. At 9:43 p.m., the front door opened, and there she was, her hair loose, her face flushed. Ryan was behind her, his hand brushing her lower back as they stepped onto the sidewalk. They didn't kiss, didn't hold hands, but the intimacy in their posture. The way she leaned into him, the way he smiled, was unmistakable. My chest burned, a mix of rage and grief so raw it felt like I was being hollowed out. I didn't storm over. I didn't shout or make a scene. Instead, I drove home, the city lights blurring through the windshield. When Elise got back at 10:30, I was in the kitchen, a beer in hand, the tracker app closed. She smiled, a little too brightly, and said she'd been at a client meeting. I nodded, sipping my beer, and let her talk about fonts and color palettes. Every word was a lie, and I let them pile up, a foundation for what I'd do next. The revenge took shape over the next week, a plan as precise as any blueprint I'd ever drawn. I didn't want to just confront her, to scream and throw accusations. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to see it reflected back at her in a way she couldn't ignore. I wanted Ryan to pay, too, not with fists or threats, but with something sharper, something that would cut deeper. I started by gathering more evidence. I hired a private investigator, a discreet woman named Carla who specialized in domestic matters. She was expensive, but worth it. Within days, she had photos. Elise and Ryan at the loft, at a park, at a diner. Their hands intertwined, their laughter captured in grainy telephoto shots. She even got audio, snippets of conversations recorded from a distance. "I can't keep doing this." Elisa's voice crackled through my earbuds one night, her tone heavy. "David deserves better." Ryan's reply, "Then tell him, be with me." I stopped the recording, my hands shaking. It was all I needed. I turned to Ryan's life next. He was a freelancer, his income tied to gallery shows and client commissions. His reputation was everything. I started small, planting seeds. I created anonymous accounts on X and local art forums, posting subtle critiques of his work. Nothing blatant, just enough to raise questions about his originality, his professionalism. I tipped off a few of his clients about scheduling issues I'd fabricated, using burner emails that couldn't be traced. One client, a big-shot restaurateur, canceled a major contract. I saw the fallout on Ryan's social media, a vague post about tough days and keeping the faith. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. For Elise, the plan was more personal. She prided herself on her career, her reputation as a designer. I knew her biggest client, a local brewery chain called Hop and Hearth, was conservative, family-oriented. They'd hired Elise for her wholesome aesthetic, her ability to craft designs that felt like home. I drafted an anonymous letter, printed on plain paper, and mailed it to their marketing director. It detailed Elisa's unprofessional conduct, hinting at an affair with a collaborator, supported by a few of Carla's photos, carefully cropped to keep my identity out of it. I didn't want to destroy her career, not completely, but I wanted her to feel the ground shift beneath her, to know that actions have consequences. The final piece was the loft. I contacted the property management company, posing as a concerned neighbor, and reported suspicious activity at the address. Late-night visitors, loud music, the works. It was a lie, but it prompted an inspection. Carla's sources confirmed the loft was leased under Ryan's name, but the lease had strict rules about subletting and personal use. A well-placed tip about unauthorized occupants led to a notice of lease violation. Ryan would be scrambling to explain himself, maybe even lose the space. By the end of the week, the plan was in motion. I felt like an engineer again, designing something intricate, something that would hold under pressure. But there was no satisfaction in it, not yet. Every night, I lay beside Elise, her breathing soft and steady, and wondered how I'd loved her so completely and missed so much. The kids were still oblivious, but Mia asked me one night, over dinner, why I seemed so quiet lately. I brushed it off, said work was stressful, but her eyes lingered, searching. I hated lying to her, but I wasn't ready to break her world apart. The reckoning came on a Saturday morning. Elise was in her studio sketching when her phone rang. I was in the kitchen, pretending to read the paper, but I heard her tone shift, sharp, defensive. "What do you mean, unprofessional?" she said, her voice rising. "Who sent this?" She hung up, her footsteps heavy as she came downstairs. "David," she said, her face pale. "Hop and Hearth just dropped me. They got some letter about me and Ryan." I looked up, my expression neutral. "A letter? What kind?" Her eyes searched mine, desperate, guilty. "I don't know. This lies, David. Someone's trying to sabotage me." I nodded, folding the paper. "Sounds serious. You should figure out who'd do something like that." She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of what she'd done, what it might cost her. I stood, grabbed my keys, and said I had to run to the office. As I drove away, the tracker app pinged. She was heading to Ryan's loft. Good. Let them panic together. The final piece of my plan was still to come, and it would be the one that broke them both. The air in Portland that May morning was heavy with the promise of rain. The kind of gray that clings to your skin and makes every thought feel sodden. I drove aimlessly for a while after leaving the house, the tracker app open on my phone, Elisa's little dot pulsing at Ryan's loft in the Pearl District. I imagined them there, huddled together, whispering about the letter to Hop and Hearth, scrambling to make sense of the noose tightening around them. I didn't feel triumph, not exactly, just a cold, mechanical satisfaction, like checking off the final box on a project timeline. My marriage, my life, was a structure on the verge of collapse, and I was the one rigging the charges. I'd spent the past week refining the final phase of my revenge, a plan as precise as any engineering schematic I'd ever drafted. It wasn't enough to chip away at their edges. Ryan's reputation, Elisa's career. I wanted them to feel the full weight of their betrayal, to see it reflected in the eyes of everyone they cared about. I wanted them to live with the consequences not just for a moment, but for years, and I wanted it to hurt. The first step was public. I'd kept Carla, the private investigator, on retainer, and she'd delivered more than I'd hoped. Her photos and recordings were a catalog of Elise and Ryan's secret life, stolen moments in coffee shops, lingering touches in his studio, late-night walks along the Willamette River. She'd even gotten a shot of them at the Laurel Hotel. Elisa's arm looped through Ryan's as they entered the lobby, her smile radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. I didn't want to destroy Elisa's life outright. She was still the mother of my children, but I wanted her to understand the cost of her choices. And Ryan, he deserved worse. I started with the neighborhood. Our community was tight-knit, the kind of place where people waved from porches and organized block parties. Elise and Ryan had both thrived on that goodwill. She with her book club and PDA meetings, he with his charming photographer persona, always volunteering to snap pics at school events. I used that against them. I created a burner email and sent a carefully worded message to the neighborhood listserv, posing as a concerned resident. The email didn't name names but hinted at inappropriate behavior between a married woman and a single dad. mentioning the loft in the Pearl District and late-night meetings that had raised eyebrows. I attached one of Carla's photos, blurred just enough to obscure their faces, but clear enough to show Elisa's bracelet and Ryan's distinctive leather jacket. Let the neighbors speculate. Let the whispers spread. The response was swift. By that afternoon, my inbox, through a separate anonymous account, pinged with replies. Some were outraged, demanding to know who was involved. Others were gossipy, tossing out guesses. One woman, Karen from 2 streets over, wrote, *I knew something was off with that photographer. Always too friendly. *I didn't reply, but I knew the message would reach Elise and Ryan soon enough. Small communities are merciless that way. Secrets don't stay buried long. Next, I targeted Ryan's career more directly. He'd been banking on a gallery show at a prestigious venue downtown, a chance to elevate his work from local to regional recognition. I'd found the gallery's contact info on his website and sent another anonymous tip, this time with a dossier of evidence. Screenshots of his texts to Elise, suggesting he was using his collaborations to pursue personal relationships, and a few pointed comments about his work being derivative. I'd done my homework, pulling examples from obscure art blogs that compared his style unfavorably to better-known photographers. The gallery didn't need much convincing. They canceled his show within 48 hours, citing scheduling conflicts. I saw the fallout on X, where Ryan posted a cryptic rant about jealousy in the art world. I sipped my coffee and scrolled past, feeling nothing. For Elise, the professional blow was already landing. Hop and Hearth's decision to drop her had rattled her, and I knew she was scrambling to salvage the relationship. I didn't stop there. I sent another anonymous letter, this time to her second biggest client, a local nonprofit that relied on her for event branding. The letter was gentler, expressing concern about her reliability, hinting at personal distractions affecting her work. I included a single photo, her and Ryan at a cafe, their hands touching across the table. The nonprofit didn't drop her outright, but they scaled back her contract, citing budget concerns. Elise came home that evening, her eyes red, and said nothing as she poured herself a glass of wine. I watched her, silent, and wondered if she suspected me yet. The final piece was personal, designed to hit them where it hurt most, their connection to the people they loved. Ryan had a daughter, Lily, a shy 10-year-old who sometimes played with Ethan in the neighborhood. I didn't want to hurt her. She was innocent, but I knew Ryan's ex-wife, Sarah, lived across town and had partial custody. Sarah was fierce. A lawyer who'd left Ryan after his freelance lifestyle became too unstable. I sent her a package, again anonymous, with a USB drive containing Carla's recordings and a note suggesting Ryan's new relationship was affecting his parenting. I didn't know what Sarah would do, but I knew she'd protect Lily at all costs. If that meant dragging Ryan through court or cutting his custody time, so be it. For Elise, the blow was closer to home. I waited until Sunday, when the kids were at my mom's for the weekend. I'd spent the morning in my office, printing a single photo, the one from the Laurel Hotel, Elise and Ryan in the lobby, her smile bright enough to break my heart. I left it on the kitchen counter with a note. *, we need to talk. Tonight. *, when Elise came downstairs, she froze, her hand hovering over the photo like it might burn her. *David, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Where did you get this? Does it matter? I asked, leaning against the counter, my arms crossed. It's you, isn't it? With him. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking. I didn't mean for this to happen. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Then what was it supposed to be? My voice was calm, but it took everything to keep it that way. You lied to me, Elise, for months. You let me think we were fine, that our family was fine, while you were sneaking off with him. It wasn't sneaking, she said, her eyes pleading. It was, I don't know, David. I was lonely. You were always working, always at the office, and Ryan, he listened. He saw me. Saw you. I laughed. A bitter sound. He saw a married woman, Elise. He saw my wife. And you let him. She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. I love you, David. I never stopped. I shook my head, the words hollow. You don't do this to someone you love. She reached for me, but I stepped back. What now? She asked, her voice breaking. What do you want me to do? I want you to feel it, I said, my voice low. I want you to know what it's like to lose something you thought was yours. Her eyes widened, fear creeping in. What did you do? I didn't answer. I grabbed my jacket and walked out, leaving her with the photo and the note. The neighborhood was quiet as I drove to a nearby bar, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I sat in a corner booth, nursing a whiskey, and checked the tracker app. Elise hadn't left the house. Good. Let her sit with it. By Monday, the fallout was everywhere. The neighborhood listserv was buzzing with speculation, and someone had identified Ryan from the blurred photo. Karen, the nosy neighbor, had posted a pointed comment about keeping our community family-friendly. Elisa's book club group chat, which I'd accessed through her phone weeks ago, was alive with questions. She hadn't shown up to their last meeting, and now people were connecting dots. Ryan's ex account was silent, but a friend of his posted about the gallery show cancellation, calling it a low blow. I sipped my coffee and watched the dominoes fall. Sarah, Ryan's ex, didn't waste time. Carla tipped me off that she'd filed for a custody modification, citing Ryan's unstable personal life. Lily was with her full-time now, and Ryan was fighting to keep his visitation rights. I didn't feel good about it. Lily was a sweet kid, but Ryan had made his choices. He'd invited this chaos when he crossed the line with my wife. Elisa's career took another hit. The nonprofit canceled her contract entirely, and word was spreading in Portland's tight-knit creative community. She'd always been the golden girl of local design, but now there were whispers. Unreliable, distracted, unprofessional. She stopped going to her studio, spending her days at home, her laptop closed. Mia and Ethan noticed, asking why Mom was acting weird. I told them she was stressed about work, but Mia's eyes narrowed, sensing more. I hated that they'd learn the truth eventually, but I wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. The final blow came a week later. I'd saved the most devastating piece for last. I'd found a lawyer, a shark named Deborah who specialized in divorce and asset division. I didn't want to end the marriage. Not yet. But I wanted Elise to know it was an option. Deborah drafted a separation agreement, cold and clinical, outlining a split of our assets and custody of the kids. I left it on the kitchen counter, next to another photo, this one of Elise and Ryan kissing in his studio, a grainy still from Carla's surveillance. I wasn't home when Elise found it. I didn't need to be. The tracker showed her at the house all day, unmoving. When I got back that evening, she was waiting in the living room, the agreement in her hands, tears streaming down her face. "David," she said, her voice raw. "Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll end things with Ryan. I'll do anything." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved for 20 years, and felt nothing but the weight of her betrayal. "You already did enough," I said. "You built this, Elise. Now you live in it." I walked upstairs, the sound of her sobbing echoing behind me. The structure of our marriage was gone, reduced to rubble. I'd dismantled their world, Ryan's career, Elisa's reputation, their secret haven, and I wasn't done. The kids would need protecting, and I'd be there for them, but Elise and Ryan, they'd carry this for the rest of their lives. And that was enough.